For over a century, humans have been drawn to science fiction with religious fervor, billions of dollars, generations of devotion, multi-decade franchises that refuse to die. Not because those stories are particularly well written, but because they provide something reality cannot. Explanations, control, and meaning. Hope that somewhere, somehow humanity figures this out. This is about what happens when fiction becomes more structurally satisfying than life. My name is Winston Eves, and today from my library, we are examining why humans are drawn to science fiction, not as casual entertainment, as a sustained cultural obsession. Science fiction appears to be about spaceships, laser weapons, and robots. The shiny technological conveniences, but that is the surface. Notice that most franchises use identical elements: faster than light travel, energy weapons, artificial intelligence. Yet only some achieve multi-generational dominance. The technology is not variable. Something deeper is operating.
Hold on now, Winston. You're saying the cool gadgets are not the reason people fall in love with these stories? Not the spaceships, not the laser swords, not the shiny future toys everyone talks about?
The gadgets are decoration. When people say Star Wars changed their life, they are not referring to lightsaber choreography. When the Matrix becomes a cultural metaphor, it is not about bullet time effects. We are looking past the aesthetic in this video, past the wrapping paper, to what these stories actually provide. But first, understand what makes science fiction distinct. Fantasy operates through the impossible. Magic, dragons, gods. Religion operates through the divine. Surrender to cosmic authority. Myth operates through the symbolic. Archetypes, not facts. Science fiction operates through systems, through mechanics, through futures framed as intelligible rather than miraculous.
But warp drives are not real either, Winston. Neither are half the machines they show. So what makes that different from magic, really? Why does one feel serious and the other feel like fantasy?
A wizard waves a wand, incomprehensible. An engineer passes buttons, that's systemic. The technology may not exist, but is framed as mechanically understandable. The universe is presented as comprehensible. And that promise that the universe makes sense, even when your life does not, appeals profoundly when reality feels chaotic and institutions offer no coherent explanations for why everything is failing. Science fiction exploded during the periods of maximum instability: post-World War II, Cold War, financial collapse, pandemic. Each wave of existential dread correlates with increased consumption. When traditional meaning structures collapse, science fiction fills the void with systemic explanations. Why is society failing? Here is the diagram. Why do you suffer? Here is the mechanical process. And here is the technological solution.
So science fiction gives people diagrams when reality stops making sense.
It provides the illusion of intelligibility, that if you are sufficiently clever, you can understand how everything works. Nothing is random, and everything has an explanation. So we will examine 5 franchises that provide specific psychological functions audiences find irreplaceable. Moral clarity when ethics are ambiguous. Institutional competence when systems have failed. Awakening when deception is pervasive. And validation when burden feels unjust. Meaning when suffering feels random. The human draw to these specific stories indicates that something deeper than appreciation for shiny toys. It indicates needs that reality is failing to meet. Science fiction did not create those voids, but it profits from them. The first function we'll call moral clarity, the restoration of comprehensible good and evil. Modern ethics are complex. Is the politician corrupt or pragmatic? Is this corporation helpful or exploitative? The answers require nuance you may not have. Moral certainty becomes impossible. In 1977, Star Wars released. It has generated over $70 billion across 5 decades and 3 generations. Why? Because you know who the villains are just by looking at them. The Empire wears black and white, commits genocide, and led by a man in a skull mask. The rebellion wears colors, fights for freedom, and shows compassion. The moral universe has visible structure.
But that is just good guys and bad guys, Winston. Every culture has told those kinds of stories forever.
The modern world does not provide that structure. Institutions you are told to trust fail you. Systems claim to be just demonstrably are not. And Star Wars offers relief. The Sith use lightning, and they're evil. The Jedi heal, and they're good. Yoda does not say, it depends on your perspective. He says, do or do not. And this extends to personal significance. The chosen one narrative. that you are not random. You have a destiny. Your suffering prepares you for greatness and appears repeatedly because reality provides no such assurance. In your case, you are random. Your suffering is likely meaningless, and that truth is unbearable. So science fiction asks, what if you were chosen? What if your pain did prepare you?
That still sounds like hope to me, Winston. And people are short on that these days. Is it really so wrong if stories give them something to hold on to, even if it is imagined?
When hope is satisfied exclusively through fiction rather than actual communities or meaningful work, it reveals that reality has failed to provide what humans need to feel significant. Star Wars succeeds because it provides moral and existential certainty when both feel absent. The need it fills does not diminish, it intensifies. And that leads us to the second function, the fantasy of competent institutions. That systems can work if properly designed. Surveys throughout the 2000s and 2020s documented collapsing institutional trust. Government, media, corporations, all experiencing erosion. When people lose faith in actual institutions, science fiction provides functional alternatives. Star Trek first aired in 1966, nearly 60 years of cultural presence. Because it depicts institutions that work. The Federation governs justly, Starfleet explores rather than conquers, and technology eliminates scarcity rather than concentrating wealth.
That sounds like paradise, man. Why would people not be drawn to a future like that?
Everyone wants that, which is why Star Trek remains popular despite being fundamentally implausible. It provides a fantasy that competent institutions are possible, that hierarchies can be just, that authority figures can be trustworthy. You can trust Starfleet officers are competent. You can trust the Federation serves the collective good. Conflicts resolved through reason rather than corruption. The institutional universe is comprehensible and just. Star Trek achieved this through technology and enlightenment, not revolution, not collapse. The Federation is functional. You can trust the system. This narrative that technology transcends political structures, that engineering matters more than governance, appeals when actual systems feel irreparably broken. Why engage in political reform when you can believe innovation will eventually solve everything?
So people watch Star Trek just to see institutions doing what they are supposed to do. That is actually pretty sad when you think about it.
It reveals the depth of institutional failure when audiences must turn to science fiction to see systems that serve their stated purposes. Star Trek provided institutional hope when trust in real institutions has collapsed, and hope that requires nothing from you except patience. To the third function, the awakening fantasy, that your struggles are not your fault, that an identifiable lie explains everything. The Matrix released in 1999 and became a cultural shorthand. Quotes like "red pill" and "wake up." Why did this metaphor achieve such resonance? Because it externalizes failure. You are not inadequate. You are deceived. The system is not broken. It is designed to exploit you. Your perception that something is fundamentally wrong is not paranoia, it's clarity. Neo is ordinary. He feels something wrong. Then Morpheus reveals, the world is a simulation extracting your energy while you sleep in a pod. Your suffering serves a system that hides itself from you.
Come on, Winston. That movie was a moment. The visuals, the philosophy, the action, the questions it asked about reality. You cannot tell me people only cared because they felt lied to.
The fantasy is not the systems are flawed. The fantasy is that awakening to their flaws grants you power. That understanding the lie allows you to transcend it. That you become Neo, capable of bending rules once you see they are artificial. Reality is less satisfying. You recognize systems are broken. That recognition grants you nothing. You still participate in them. Awakening to deception does not free you from it. But the Matrix provides the fantasy that it does. Knowledge becomes power. Understanding grants agency. And audiences watch this and feel vicarious efficacy. This appeals to audiences who feel powerless despite understanding what is wrong. You recognize corruption but cannot stop it. You can see exploitation but remain dependent on it. You know the media manipulates but have limited alternatives.
But the distrust is real, though. Systems do lie. Governments do manipulate. Corporations do exploit people every day. That part is not fantasy. People feel that in their bones.
It provides the fantasy that awakening is enough, that seeing truth transforms you into someone capable of fighting it. And for audiences who have awakened but lack ability or the will to change anything, that fantasy is preferable to admitting powerlessness. The popularity of The Matrix correlates with periods of intense institutional distrust. The franchise succeeds because it validates suspicion while providing the comforting illusion that suspicion itself is revolutionary. Which leads us to the fourth function, validation of a generational burden. That you inherited broken systems and you are expected to fix them while being blamed for their failure. Mobile Suit Gundam first aired in 1979, over $30 billion generated, and continues producing series today. Why does this war narrative persist?
It gives people the feeling that understanding the problem is the same thing as fixing it. That seeing the truth somehow makes you free.
Because it treats youth burden seriously. Adults created corrupt systems, started wars, destroyed environments, then conscripted children to fight while claiming it is for their protection. The young pilots recognize the hypocrisy, but they have no alternative. Climate collapse is inherited from previous generations. Economic instability created by systems before you participated. Political dysfunction you are told to solve despite visible corruption. Gundam says, yes, the adults failed. You are inheriting their war, and they will send you to die in it. The institutional hypocrisy is explicit. The Earth Federation claims democracy while oppressing colonies. Zeon claims liberation while embracing fascism. Both use children soldiers while framing it as necessary. The systems are equally corrupt. The only question is which corruption you serve. Gundam validates that experience. It says your perception of systemic failure is accurate. Your burden is real. Your anger at being forced to fix problems you did not create is justified.
Winston, that is children piloting weapons in wars they did not start, being told it is their duty. That is grim. Why would anyone choose to sit with a story like that?
It offers the hope that comes from being seen, from having your experience reflected with the seriousness it deserves. When systems tell you problems are not as bad as you perceive, having fiction say, no, this is genuinely bad, provides psychological relief. Gundam succeeds because it refuses to minimize generational burden, and that refusal resonates with audiences who are tired of being told their struggles are their own fault. And that leads us to the fifth function, meaningless transplant. The transformation of random suffering into cosmic necessity. Neon Genesis Evangelion first aired in 1995 and has generated over $20 billion. It remains culturally dominant. And why do audiences attach to a narrative about children being psychologically destroyed? Because it makes suffering matter. Shinji Ikari is 14. Piloting is traumatic. He breaks psychologically, and the narrative frames this as necessary. His pain prevents human extinction, and his trauma serves cosmic purpose. Modern suffering often feels meaningless. Your work is replaceable. Your contributions are negligible. Your pain serves no larger purpose. You are statistically insignificant, and that void is unbearable. Evangelion transplants meaning. What if your suffering prevented the apocalypse? What if your psychological collapse was not personal failure, but necessary sacrifice? What if your isolation served humanity's survival? Audiences recognize their own pain, depression, isolation, and inadequacy, and it's reflected in Shinji. But in Evangelion, that pain has cosmic significance. It is not just depression, it is the weight of preventing third impact.
So it tells people their fears are right, that the system is broken, that the burden is unfair, but it does not offer a way out. No rescue, no promise. Is that really something people want?
Correct, but humans require meaning to function. When reality does not provide it, fiction can substitute. Evangelion succeeds because it takes existential suffering seriously and elevates it to cosmic significance. For audiences whose suffering feels ignored or minimized, that elevation is valuable even when it is functional. 5 franchises, 5 psychological functions. Together they may map what audiences need and cannot find in reality. Moral clarity when ethics are ambiguous. Institutional competence when systems have failed. Awakening when deception is pervasive. Validation when burden feels unjust. Meaning when suffering feels random. These are not random preferences. They are psychological supplements for what modernity fails to provide.
So people use these stories to feel things they cannot feel in your life. Purpose, clarity, validation. Is that wrong, Winston?
The question is whether these stories inspire people toward building better realities or provide sufficient satisfaction that building becomes optional. For some, science fiction motivates genuine action. For others, it provides replacement frameworks. Why fight for institutional reform when they can watch Starfleet function? Why organize resistance when you can watch Neo fight? Why process your suffering when you can watch Shinji bear cosmic weight? When religion declines, when institutions fail, when communities dissolve, something needs to fill the void. Sometimes it is science fiction, and science fiction is effective because it pretends to be about the future while actually being about the present. Every dystopia is about now. Every utopia is about what now lacks. Science fiction is not prediction, it is a diagnosis. So here's my question: what does science fiction provide you that reality does not? What void does it fill? Do you return to those narratives for moral clarity, institutional hope, validation of distrust, acknowledgement of a burden, or cosmic significance? Your answer reveals what reality failed to give you, and whether science fiction inspires you to create it or consoles you about its absence. These stories can inspire genuine change, but they can also become substitutes for structures that once provide these things in reality. The comment section is open. Tell me what void science fiction fills for you, because the genre will continue providing answers. The question is whether those answers will inspire you to build actual futures or console you about fictional ones. The stars are very far away, but they are easier to imagine than the work required here. But these are just my observations.